very welcome to the Desi Crypto Show. We have with us Sasha with us from API3, and we welcome her. Sasha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Nitin. Thank you for
Thanks
having
for joining. Thanks for joining. It is lovely to hear some of the good work which is going on in the industry. We were talking about some future which this industry brings on the table. So we get really excited looking at what blockchain and crypto can change in the world. So I think in that context, we've seen a lot of projects coming out in this space, even from India, and a lot of them would like to know more about your project, and we would like to know more about you and your project and understand how we can use what issue you're solving. And then we'll try and talk about what your perspective about India and in a crypto and blockchain space will be. So let's begin. So can you give us a quick introduction about yourself, please? It'll be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to keep it short. I studied computer science and statistics in my undergrad, and I actually wrote this little thing on my LinkedIn. Like I studied computer science and statistics before it was cool. Kind of a joke, but actually now it's a common major because of like data science. But when I studied it, I just liked computer science and statistics, and it ended up being a very useful double major. Okay. And then I did a master's in computer science. I started a PhD, but I quit like quickly afterwards. And that was actually surprisingly helpful because when I was able to jump into crypto really quickly because, I mean, white papers are essentially academic papers. So if you're familiar with reading like academic computer science papers, like crypto isn't too much of a jump. And then I have like a practical career too. So I was a software engineer and a data scientist. And my last job before crypto was I was working in Facebook in New York as a software engineer. And when I moved to New York, I moved there alone, but I started hanging out with all these people that were in crypto. Like that became my social circle. So I actually really got obsessed with the technology, with the community, especially. Like I love the kind of people that are in crypto and blockchain. So I just love everything about it, pretty much, almost everything. and in crypto, so because I started networking with people that were in crypto, I started consulting. Like it was very like a natural progression because people could kind of see I knew what I was talking about. So I started consulting. Then I worked for a company. I don't know if you've heard of it, Gauntlet Networks. It's essentially, it's kind of like an auditing firm. They run simulations of like mostly DeFi protocols to see if they do what they say they're going to do, especially with all the game theory and financial incentives to kind of simulate that to make sure it works the way it's written in the white paper. So I worked for them for a bit, and that was great. I only have good things to say about Gauntlet. And then I started talking to people that were working in the Oracle space. So I'll get into after what I'm sure you're going to ask me what the Oracle problem is, but I was interested in this general problem in blockchain, and I was looking at the current solutions, and I was unsatisfied for various reasons. And again, I can get into that afterwards. And I started talking to people that had the same opinions, and then those people ended up being my co-founders at API3. So it was like we saw a similar problem, started talking about it, and we're like, let's just, write a white paper and see where it goes.
So what happens after that? Did you write a white paper? How did you?
Yeah. So that, surprisingly, it was less than a year ago. So I was consulting with some Oracle projects, and I was really frustrated because I felt I saw a problem that dealt with not really knowing where you get your data from. It makes it hard to see who's telling the truth and who's not. And maybe I'm getting into too many technical details, but yeah, so we saw the same problem, and we pretty much started writing the white paper last summer, and everything moved so quickly. Like we got investors, really great investors really quickly. And it's just been like super fast paced ever since.
Very nice. So what do you think about what is blockchain and crypto solving right now? What is your take on it? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I actually wrote, maybe I'm well prepared to answer this because I wrote an article recently about my opinions about the current state of blockchain and where it's going in the future. But so the conversation, I guess 3 years ago was mostly about like sound money and Bitcoin and not having a inflationary currency. And that was like the primary benefit. But now with DeFi, people are noticing that there's a lot more benefits. So one thing, I actually talked about this in a recent interview, but I found the whole Gamestop you're familiar with what
Yes, yes.
So during that, I thought like something like this would never happen if stocks were issued on the blockchain, because everything is visible. Like people are anonymous, but what happens on the blockchain, anyone can have access to if you just, run a node on your computer and know a little bit of programming. So like having to wonder if a stock is shorted or whether it's covered, how much of it has been shorted. Like that was the whole GameStop thing. Like people were like, hey, this thing is shorted. And even I don't know what's happening currently, but I think people are still wondering like how much has been shorted? Has it been covered? All these questions that wouldn't exist if this was happening on the blockchain, because it's visible on the blockchain. So transparency, it's so big. And another thing with GameStop was when people were being prohibited from trading on, again, there's some in general that doesn't happen on the blockchain because it's non-custodial. You have access to your money. Like if you have your private key, you are in custody of your funds, and trading happens 24/7. So, and these are just two examples like that. Just from GameStop, you can kind of immediately see two additional benefits to crypto. That's not just, sound money Bitcoin. Like I think people are recognizing a lot more benefits. And I think there's going to be future benefits, but this is just literally just now, which is so much like people, are kind of wondering, how do we get blockchain more adoption? But I'm like, we've had so much adoption in 10 years. Like Bitcoin was made
that's true.
in 2009. Like I'm very optimistic. Like in general, I'm an optimistic person, but when I hear like, how do we get the public more interested in blockchain? I'm like, we've done a pretty good job already. So I'm kind of optimistic about the future.
So I'm going to ask one more slightly difficult question, because I think there's no easy answer to this. But do you think the blockchain is for, we always talk about blockchain is for common people, right? It has to be for everybody, right? But still it is complicated for everyone to get a hang of it, right? Not only get a hang of it, even if I get a hang of it, to participate in it, right? Probably I can go to maybe one or two platforms. Maybe I will be able to do something about that or buy some coins, etc., and sell about it. But still the access and the usability is still complicated. What do you think about that, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess I'll make 2 points about that.
Yeah.
One, I guess my general point is that there's always a trade-off, not just in blockchain, but in reality, there's a trade-off between freedom and like security and ease of use. So I feel like if you really are going to have the freedom of being in control of your money and doing with it what you will, that comes at a cost of being educated. So I feel like on a certain level, like you need to understand some basics about computer networks and finance. But I do still think that's not an excuse. Like I do think still the system is complicated. But another nice thing about blockchain is what I kind of alluded to about freedom, where if you, for example, me, like I don't want anyone in custody of my crypto. Like I have it on my hardware wallet, etc. But if you want to trade off a bit of that freedom or a bit of that whatever you want to call it, yes, exactly. So if you want to trade some of that flexibility off by using more of a centralized exchange or a centralized wallet, you have the freedom to do that. Like if you just want to trade on Coinbase and keep your money on Coinbase, which is a centralized company, you have the freedom to do that. So I don't think the blockchain is all about being, how do I say this? It's not necessarily all about being decentralized. Like that's very important. But the other thing is just the freedom of people being able to build what they want. So if you want to build something that's easy to use and it's a bit more centralized, people can use that if they're willing to trade off whatever flexibility, freedom, whatever you want to call it. They want to trade a little bit of that off to use a more convenient service. They can do that. So I feel like you have to, as an individual, figure out like, what's my balance of,
where's my sweet spot about,
exactly.
Control and flexibility, I would say, something like that.
Yes.
So this is good. We still, I think do you think that we are moving very fast in the blockchain space? I was having a conversation even today, and I was still trying to explain what Bitcoin is, okay, what blockchain is, and people talk about crypto, people see the growth, but people forget about they also hear about blockchain, but they forget about this decentralization, right? The most important tenet, which is the foundation of the thought process, which is decentralization. And it took me a while to explain. And so, we got into it, they understood. And then I had then the moment the other question came is, okay, after Bitcoin, there's more currencies. What about Ethereum? And the moment I opened up Ethereum, it was like, wow, it is not only, about peer-to-peer money transfer or value transfer. It is about, or sound money, as you nicely put it. It is about decentralizing the entire thing, putting the entire thing on blockchain and making a giant supercomputer, right? And people are still rattling, they're still not able to comprehend the first one. And I think we're now in DeFi and we're talking about NFTs and I don't know, more and more innovations coming. I mean, what do you think? Are we going fast or is that good pace? What is your view? Sometimes I think it's just innovating fast, which is good actually in a way. So yeah.
So let me just understand your question. It's moving fast. Is that good or bad? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah, I mean, people have still not caught on to the first step in my view, right?
Yeah.
We're still, I don't know, we have maybe 100 million people in crypto so far. Still a lot way to go.
So I guess before I answer any question, I should say that like my personality is very optimistic and I find a way of finding the good in everything. Yeah. There's a lot of people that work on different things in blockchain. Like there's so many people that work on how do we make it more usable? How do we make wallets that are more usable for the general public? And then there's people that are on the cutting edge. Like how do what's the next step? And it's kind of like that common, you've probably seen that graph about like early adopters, innovators, blah, blah, blah. It really applies to blockchain. It's almost like more exaggerated in blockchain. Like there's people that are working at the absolute cutting edge where things are a bit more risky. You don't know if this thing is going to fail or not. And there's people that are like, okay, my focus is on the public and how do we get more people that are less familiar with the technology. So I feel like there's people working on all aspects of it. And personally, I like the kind of chaos of the cutting edge. So that's my personality. Like this is a little bit tangential, but I mention it quickly. Like I find the types of people that are in blockchain, first of all, there are people that understand the tech, which is a big learning curve. But there are also people that thrive in this environment of things being a little bit chaotic and things being a little bit volatile. Because like I've talked to finance people before, and they're like horrified by crypto because it's so volatile. But to me, I'm like, everything is volatile. Like there's nothing stable, and I'm sure you've noticed it. You seem to be agreeing with me. But like the type of people in blockchain are okay with a little bit of chaos and the riskiness. It's like they enjoy that, and I'm that type of person. So yeah, to answer your question, things are moving fast, but I feel like there's enough people working on different aspects.
Great answer. Great answer. I have not seen a better answer for this question. That means you're spot on. I'm personally very happy to hear, and you can see the appreciation written all over my face about this answer.
We must just agree. We're like, oh, we both agree with each other. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It was not very clear to me when I asked this question to you. But when you answered, it was like, actually this makes sense. It's nice. Very good. Okay. Let's go to API3, your project. What are you doing there? Tell us more about it.
So again, I'm assuming your audience is a bit more technical, or at least the people watching this episode. So I guess I have to first start with something called the Oracle problem. Like I'd have to define that first. So with again, like something like Ethereum, a general blockchain, you can write pretty much any kind of contract because it's like a general computer. But the thing is, the way that consensus works, decentralized consensus works, is that like every single node in the network, like I'm including like Bitcoin and more general blockchains like Ethereum, like every node has to be capable of validating a transaction because it's decentralized. Like no single person decides this is the next block. It's decided decentrally. So every single node has to be able to validate a transaction. And validate just means, like in Bitcoin, validate means, do you have enough? If you're going to send me 1 Bitcoin, do you actually have 1 Bitcoin in your wallet? Like that's a validation. And it's a bit more complex with Ethereum. But in order to have this decentralized consensus mechanism, every single node has to have access to the same data in order to be able to validate the state of the network. But the kind of data on the blockchain natively is essentially like, what is your account and what kind of data is in your account? So it's really like ownership data. Like, what token do you have in your address? What token do I have in my address? But if you want to write really interesting contracts, or the things that I'm excited about in blockchain are pretty much replacing these processes in the real world, like in particular banking, but even things like insurance and even like law to a certain extent, which is sometimes controversial. But so let me just give a quick concrete example. Yeah. I don't know if your audience is familiar with derivatives, but I'll just define it in case.
Yeah, yes, sure.
So it's just a contract between parties, and the value of the contract is dependent upon an underlying asset. And this actually surprised me when I learned this a couple of years ago, but the largest part, the derivatives have a market cap or have a value of like 300 trillion. So most of the things that hedge funds are doing and traders are doing is actually trading and selling derivatives. They're not actually trading and selling assets. They're trading. Correct. Yeah. So they're basically, this is like options, futures, correct, forwards, which are essentially just bets on price movements. Like, you're not trading actual assets. You're just betting on price movements essentially. And this makes up like the largest part of the financial world. Interestingly, for those that don't know, I didn't know this a couple of years ago. I was quite surprised. And if you're a programmer, you can see that a derivatives contract is so easily programmable. Like a forward contract is just, I will sell you this at a future date at this price. And that's easily programmatical, like literally trigger a function, check the date. If it's past this date, transfer the assets. Like, that's such a simple, logical thing. But in the real world, this is so complicated. It goes through so many escrows and third parties and people validating, where if you were to do this on the blockchain, it's extremely simple. It's literally a couple of lines of code, something that is an incredibly complex process in the real world. But so you might be wondering, like, why isn't this happening right now on the blockchain? Why aren't we doing options, futures, all sorts of financial derivatives on the blockchain? Is because we don't have price data on the blockchain. So like, I don't...
Underlying assets, price data.
Yeah, exactly.
The price data of underlying assets.
Exactly. So like, the price of corn isn't on the blockchain. So you can't write a derivative contract on that. So this is what's called the Oracle problem, is the blockchain is isolated because it doesn't have access to outside data. And and I want to make it clear for the audience that this isn't a flaw with blockchain. Like, this is a security feature, because if other computers can interfere with the blockchain network, it's not secure. So the blockchain network is isolated, but that creates the problem of how do we get interesting applications if we don't have access to data? So that's the general problem space that we work in. Like, how do you get data securely on the blockchain in a decentralized way? Because a smart contract is only as secure as its weakest link. And if you have if a single node is providing data, that's a central point of failure, and you've like destroyed the whole benefit of a decentralized, trustless contract. So we work in this problem area of how do you get data in a trustworthy, secure, decentralized way on the blockchain. So that's the Oracle problem. There's a couple of different projects that work on this problem. It's not just us, but we focus, it's called API3. So we focus specifically on getting web API data on chain. Like, data can come from anywhere, and a lot of these other projects focus on more of a general problem of how do you get any data on the blockchain, whereas we focus specifically on connecting to web APIs and working with web API providers. So we work on, like, I guess you could say a subset of the Oracle problem.
And so with API3, can we bring this data? You gave me the example of derivative. Can we, and exactly the point about the price of corn. Can we bring the price of corn from the real trade world, or the price of corn on, I don't know, Google Finance or Yahoo Finance, and bring that back to a smart contract? Is that a simpler way of understanding?
Yeah. that's essentially the idea, but you want to get the data, you want to have some redundancy there. So you get a couple of different web APIs that provide the same data. They transmit the data to the blockchain, and then it's aggregated in some way in order to prevent any single point tampering with the data.
Okay. And so you think that who will be your audience? Would these be the DeFi players, or if I'm just putting contracts on blockchain, or what do you think would be your audience? Who would be using these?
Yeah, that's a good question. So currently, with what's happening in blockchain currently, I mean, there are oracles being used in the space, and the vast majority, like 90+%, is price data. So all DeFi, maybe I shouldn't say all DeFi, but a large majority of DeFi projects need data in the form of prices. So if anyone in your audience is familiar with like stable coins or lending platforms, they require knowing the price of crypto assets. So So it's kind of ironic. Like most stable coins, or at least the original stablecoin MakerDAO, it's based off of you providing ETH and you getting. Actually, it's pretty complicated, but they have this really interesting incentive mechanism in order to create this token that's pegged to the dollar using like very clever financial incentives. But it requires the price of ETH. So one kind of interesting thing, or it's kind of ironic, but the price of ETH isn't on the blockchain. Like the majority of trading happens outside of the blockchain. So the Ethereum blockchain doesn't know the price of Ethereum unless something inputs that data from outside the blockchain. If that makes sense.
Yeah, this makes perfect sense. So you would pick it up from a centralized exchange, put it in an API, and then give it back to on a smart contract. Is that something API3 would do?
Yeah. So I feel like if I were to get into details about my project, it would kind of require people knowing about how other projects solve this. But so we have something. We use what's called first-party oracles. Like a lot of other Oracle solutions, they have anonymous node operators query APIs and provide that data on chain. And that's a problem for many reasons I can get into. But we actually, so we're a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and we reach out to actual API providers and get them to run nodes. So it's not like third parties querying data. It's like we partner with actual API providers that run something called an Oracle node, which is something that's like halfway between the blockchain and the outside world. And they transmit that data on the blockchain. But we have multiple API providers that provide the same data, and they all transmit it, and then that gets aggregated on chain.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting concept. And from a project perspective, how far ahead are you? What's your timeline looks like? Yeah.
Good question. I think all the API3 holders, they find this the most interesting question, right? Like when's the product going live? We're currently auditing, and so it depends on the auditor's timeline, but we should be live in like a month or two.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now let's just change a little bit. This is great. Means I learned a lot about API3, and I'm very excited. I would actually go ahead and read more and try and figure out. I think that sometimes I think that you don't realize these are problems on a blockchain until you go into a blockchain in itself. For example, we talk about the temperature of a city is not there on the blockchain, right? What's the temperature in let's say Ohio? It's not there on blockchain, and it's difficult to get it because you have to get a centralized thing into it, and that's what is being solved here. So that's awesome.
And I do want to add something quickly, that this isn't like an imagined problem. Like most of the hacks that have happened in DeFi, or at least the really expensive hacks, like millions and millions of dollars, have dealt with oracles. Like one example is Compound. They were getting their data from Coinbase. So they were using just Coinbase to get their data, and someone made a giant trade on Coinbase to manipulate some price, and that caused $10 million to get liquidated on Compound by like a fake fake price data or manipulated price data. So like this isn't an imagined problem. This is a very serious problem. Because as soon as you manipulate, because it's all about the data is what causes the execution of the smart contract. And if you provide the wrong data, you can liquidate someone. You can, it's a very serious.
And like what we call as flash crash on one exchange actually made the compound liquidate the positions of people. Right? Yeah. Got it. Good. So changing a little bit more, what means setting out of outside? I think you're based out of US, right? You are currently in. Sorry.
No. I'm laughing because we're like completely all over the place. Like the team, I'm right now in Toronto. I was in the US a year ago. We got a couple of people in the US, one developer in South Africa, one in Turkey, one of our guys in India. Like it's all over.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting out of Toronto, what do you hear about India and blockchain? Do you hear anything? What is your view about it?
So what do I hear about India and blockchain? So unfortunately, the only thing that immediately comes to mind is the regulations that you guys have been dealing with recently. But yeah, lots of good developers coming out of India. One project that we work with really closely called Matic Polygon.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're great and they're one of like the strongest layer 2 players right now. So that in terms of development, like they're the first ones that come to mind and they're really great, have a great product. And then I was actually just talking to Midav, who's the one Indian guy on the team. He was saying that like he gave me a metric of like $1 billion in terms of crypto investments coming out of India. I don't know where those numbers are coming from, but he's saying he's noticing a growth. That's not my personal view, but he's seeing an increase in crypto interest in India. But yeah, from personal experience, Matic is the first one that comes to mind. And I think all of the people on the team are based in India. And that's a great project.
Yes, Matic has done extremely well. We're very proud of that. The significant amount of team is based out of here.
I do want to say we have one of our community managers, Midav, is based in India. I think, what did he tell me? He's based in the Kerala region. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, Kerala. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't remember which town or city, but yeah, I feel like I can't do this interview without saying hi to Midav.
Good. There are significant amount of projects coming out. You know about Polygon, Matic. That's actually leading the way. But there are many more very interesting projects coming out. India has a huge tech population. People understand technology, would code on it and all. So
So I was going to say I worked at Facebook and worked with a lot of Indians. So I'm familiar with the programming knowledge on average.
So means I think we would like to hear. We're actually end of time, but we would like to hear from you. One more important question is, what message would you give to young technologists about blockchain, etc.? Because I think it's coming from you will matter a lot. So.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like I could spend a long time on this, but I was actually having a conversation with some friends this weekend and they were all people that I went to school with. 2 of them are doing their PhDs in machine learning. 2 of them work they're really great software developers. And they're really interested, like, oh, you're in crypto, like, tell me about it. And I told them, like, this is such a good opportunity for people that understand technology to make some smart investments. Like, this isn't investment advice. I have to say that for like legal reasons, but the way anyone that's done trading, you know that the way that you profit is having knowledge that other people don't. Like, that's just true. Like, in the market, you can get lucky, but in general, it means you know something's going to happen or you know something that most people don't. Like, that's how you profit. And if you have computer science background, so you're saying advice for technologists, like if you have a computer science background, you are in such a good position to really understand the technology and be able to decipher like what's a scam and what's not. Like, it's really unfortunate that so much news happens about scams in crypto because it really colors the space in a poor way. But there are scams. But the thing is, if you understand the technology, you can tell who's actually building something and who's not. And you have such a good opportunity to invest in good projects that have a future if you have that background. So I mean, specifically, like if you understand computer networks, you don't have to be an expert, but like computer networks, cryptography, programming, and a bit of finance, like you're in such a good position either to contribute. Like there's such a huge demand for smart contract developers. Like I can't even tell you, I've worked at different places, and trying to hire competent smart contract developers is so hard, specifically because anyone that understands how to program, for example, in Solidity on Ethereum, they usually create their own projects. Like it's so profitable that most people that are good smart contract developers just do their own thing. So it's really hard to hire people that are good at this. So if you do have a computer background and you're wondering what to work on, like blockchain is such, like I can't even express like how big of an opportunity it is for technologists, for young technologists.
Yes. And I think that's what we see as well. It's very difficult to find competent, smart contract developers, and you can create a huge career in blockchain. It is just the beginning, so we totally resonate this.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. Means I think it was lovely. I personally learned a lot about API3. Your perspective about blockchain, that helped a lot. It was very fresh outlook. I really admire that. I think it doesn't come so easily. It was nice. It was very good. And yeah, it was great conversation. I think our audience will enjoy it. We'll circulate it around, and I think we'll gain some more followers, some more people will try and adopt crypto in one way or the other.
Hope so. I hope so. Yeah. Thank you, Nitin.
Thank you.
Such a good conversation.